Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this special event, which is part of the Food as Medicine initiative sponsored by Newton-Wellesley Hospital, as well as the Mass General Cancer Center. My name is Dr. Amy Commander, and I'm thrilled to lead this session tonight along with Chef Laura Klein. And we are excited to teach you about strategies for nutrition in terms of cancer risk reduction, as well as tips to optimize health for individuals with a history of cancer. This does happen to be Cancer Prevention Month, so this is a great time to focus on these healthy nutrition tips. I should also note that February has been designated American Heart Month, so a lot of the strategies and nutrition tips we share tonight are also very important for prevention of cardiovascular disease. I'd like to note that Chef Laura and I are excited to answer your questions. And so there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to enter your questions there over the course of this evening, and we will definitely get to them at different parts during the session tonight. In addition, this session is being recorded, so we will be able to send you a recording as well as helpful resources over email tomorrow. Before we jump in and get started, I thought I'd briefly introduce myself and tell you a little bit about why we wanted to focus on strategies for cancer risk reduction in our session tonight. So I'm a breast oncologist at the Newton-Wellesley Hospital and Mass General Cancer Center, and one of my interests is the field of lifestyle medicine, and I actually direct the lifestyle medicine program at the Mass General Cancer Center. Chef Laura, why don't you introduce yourself briefly as well?
Yeah. So my name's Laura Klein. So I am a culinary coach. So that means I have a background as a wellness coach, and I'm also a professional chef. So I get to combine my two passions and to teach people how to cook healthy and really empower people to have the tools to do that at home.
So we're so fortunate to learn from Chef Laura this evening. I know I always love learning from her. So before we jump in and get started with our exciting event this evening, I thought I'd share with you some nutrition tips in terms of cancer risk reduction, since this is the focus of the evening tonight. As Laura noted, what are the tools we can use to help improve our overall health and reduce risk of cancer and, of course, other chronic diseases? So the American Cancer Society, as well as the American Institute of Cancer Research and World Cancer Research Fund, have reviewed the literature and come together on guidelines that are really important for all of us to keep in mind as we think about how can we eat to optimize our health. And I'm going to simplify them in the beginning of this presentation, but certainly we can discuss these points in more detail over the course of the evening. So the first point is to think about eating an array of healthy fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And over the course of the lesson tonight, we're going to learn a lot about that. I do have to say one funny thing. When I told my 13-year-old son last night that we are going to be teaching a plant-based cooking class, which is important for risk reduction for cancer, the first thing he said is, "Mom, no one wants to hear that they need to eat more vegetables." And so I did tell him, well, they haven't attended our class, because we are going to make this fun and interactive, and you will see these recipes are amazing, and you will want to incorporate these into your diet. So hopefully he'll agree with me when I bring home the leftovers tonight.
Definitely, that'll change his mind.
Exactly. So in addition to the focus on lots of healthy fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, it's also important to limit sugar-sweetened beverages, limit alcohol consumption, avoid processed meats, and limit red meat. And finally, it's important to limit consumption of processed foods and the term ultra-processed foods. In fact, many of you may have seen a headline in the news just a few days ago that a recent study demonstrated that increased consumption of ultra-processed foods, which means they have very long labels with many ingredients that you don't understand, unfortunately is associated with an increased risk of numerous types of cancer. So we're going to go over these points in greater detail over the course of the evening, but I wanted to start with that brief summary. Now I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Great. Well, let's get cooking. So thank you, Dr. Commander. So just a few things before we get started. So this is our first time together. So we always like to start with a few basics. before you get started cooking? Well, first of all, tonight we're going to be making these delicious recipes that are from the American Institute of Cancer Research. So we're going to be making a sweet potato chili with all these different toppings and loaded with lots of delicious vegetables. And we're also going to be making a warm kale salad with quinoa and roasted beets. So these, not only are they delicious, they're great for this time of year because they're warm and they're nutritious. And they're also going to be great for your Super Bowl weekend. So
Awesome.
we're going to like really set you up. So it's going to be great. But before we get started, just a couple of tips. So the first thing is I always recommend reading your recipes through at least twice. So print them out or have them on your computer, whatever works for you. And you want to do this for a couple of reasons. So the first is you want to get an idea of the flow, especially if you're going to be making like more than one recipe. And the number one reason that I hear that people don't cook more at home is, what do you think?
Not having all the ingredients, not reading the recipe in advance, not being prepared.
Yeah, well, not having time.
And time, yeah. that's
Right,
it.
that is like
Yeah,
a
that's
number
for
one
me,
thing.
actually.
I mean, that is just like a real barrier. So, so in order to maximize your time in the kitchen, when you've decided to dedicate that, you want to make sure that you get an idea of that organizational flow. You also want to make sure that there wasn't anything you need to do ahead of time. So in tonight's recipe, you need to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. So if you haven't done that yet, please go ahead and do that. You also want to make sure that you have all your ingredients on hand. The last thing you want to have to do is like run out to the store, right? Like that really is going to impede your cooking. So make sure you have everything on hand. And then the biggest tip I can give you is having everything prepped and ready to go. So we sent you out on purpose a little list of what we'd like you to have you prepared and ready to go. So let me just share with you. This is our prep for our chili. So this is also called in culinary terms your mise en place. It just is French for everything in its place. And it might look, like, oh, I'm not going to spend the time doing this, but really cuts down on your time. If you have everything prepped and ready to go, when you come ready to cook, you're going to, it's really going to, yes, it's really going to cut down your time. I think it actually makes it more fun. You can just grab things. And I also like to lay things out in the order I'm going to use them. And then you don't have to rely so much on the recipe, and after a while, it's just going to be second nature. So it's really a good tip, I think. Okay. So the other thing that we want to do is have a clean workstation. So you see Dr. Commander and I have our workstation. We have lots of room to move around. I always like to have a side towel or something to keep my station nice and clean. You want to have your most important tool, which is your knife, your chef's knife. So if you're going to invest in any piece of kitchen equipment, this is the one I recommend. So a chef's knife is bonded fully from the handle to the tip. So it's not two separate pieces. And you want it to feel good in your hand, nice and a little heavy, but not too heavy. And we're going to be going over some basic knife skills. So I'm going to teach you how to hold the knife and a few other tips. And then I always have like a compost bowl or something to put your scraps in so you don't have to keep running back and forth to the trash. So you want to kind of keep everything contained in one spot and, kind of eliminate that extra step. So that's another tip. And then I always have kosher salt and pepper, my little pinch pots there. So everything is all in one spot. And lastly, of course, we always want to wash our hands. You've washed your hands.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's get started.
Great. I'm so excited.
All right. So when we're cooking multiple recipes, we always want to start with the recipe that takes the longest lead time. So that's going to be our chili. So we're going to start actually by cutting up our onions. So this is where we're going to do some nice skills. So before we actually start cooking, yes, we're going to have to prep some ingredients. So I just want to show you how to chop an onion. And this is a great skill to have. It's not just applicable to onions, it's applicable to a lot of other things. So let's just do some basic knife skills.
Great.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing is how to hold your knife. So you want to hold it, it's called a pinch grip. So you're going to use your thumb and your forefinger, and you're going to grip right where the blade ends. There's like a little ledge here. And then you're going to wrap the other fingers around the handle. So you've got your two fingers, your thumb and your forefinger on the blade, everything else around the handle. And you should have like a gentle rocking motion. You should be able to just kind of guide that. Okay, so the onion has two ends. It has this root end, this long kind of root end, and then it has this kind of hairy bulb end. So you see it has those two ends. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our knife in our grip and we're just going to cut off this root end. So just cut down and cut that root end right off. Perfect. And then I'm going to put that right into our compost bowl. Okay. So then we always want to have a flat surface when we're cutting, just, all about safety here. So then what we're going to do is we're going to cut right through that bulb end. So just come across and cut that. Yep, right through, perfect. And now you've got your two ends and we can peel off the skin. So just reach in there and like, if you have to take a layer of the onion with you, it's okay. Like sometimes it's hard to get the skin, just to get the skin to come off. So you might have to take a little layer. That's good, perfect. And then we're gonna do the other half.
I'm just happy that I haven't started crying yet.
Well, but wait, we haven't gotten to the best part yet. Okay, so now we have our two onion halves. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take one of our onion halves. We're gonna put it down the board. We're gonna put our hand on top. We wanna make sure that we are very safe. And then we're just gonna come across and we're gonna cut a horizontal cut and we're gonna stop about a half an inch from the bulb so that we keep it intact. So just put your hand on top and we're just gonna make one cut. No, not that way, this way,
Oh, okay.
horizontal.
Yes,
Yep.
got it. Oh,
Okay, and keep it like right about halfway up.
Okay.
There. Like right there. Yep, go right across,
Got it.
straight across. Yep. There you go. There you go, perfect. That's it. Yep,
Okay,
now
I'll
put your
just
neck,
stop it.
yep,
Okay.
pull it. Okay. Now you're gonna turn your onion to face you. And what we're gonna do is we wanna dice this onion. And we wanna have about a half an inch dice, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come across, we're not gonna do it yet, and we're gonna cut horizontal cuts. We're gonna kind of follow the lines of the onion, see how it has these little lines. We're gonna stop again about a half an inch from the root. And just watch me, we're gonna make about half-inch cuts down the onion. So just put your tip of the knife in, we're not gonna cut all the way down. We're gonna start about a half an inch, yep, right there, perfect. Looks good. Perfect, come all the way down, yep, very nice. Okay, and then we have this little checkerboard. So we have a little checkerboard on our onion. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come across, not yet, and we're gonna cut the onion, we're gonna dice it. It's gonna automatically dice the onion. So what we're gonna do is, this is our cutting hand, the hand with your knife. The other hand is your guide hand. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a claw so that we don't cut our fingertips off. So we're gonna tuck our fingernails in, we're gonna use our thumb as our guide, and we're gonna use our, they're gonna cut it, yep, in a claw, and we're gonna use the knuckle of our guide hand as a guide. So we're gonna just come across and we're gonna give it a dice, perfect. And it's just gonna automatically dice the onion. When you can't hold it anymore, you're gonna just turn it over like this, and then we're just gonna give that a nice chop. Nice. And there we have the perfectly diced onion. And we can just put this in here. This is called the bench scraper. It's a nice tool I like to use. A knife up there. And then we'll just grab our onion, and that's what we're gonna use for the first step of our chili. Very nice. Okay, so we don't really need, let's just chop this little piece up. Get rid of that. And we don't really need to chop the rest because we only need one onion. So we will save this one for another dish. Okay, see how easy that was? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to build flavors in layers. And this is a great technique that I like to use so that we use a lot less salt and a lot less fat. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do what we call sweating out our onions and our veggies. So we're going to turn you're gonna need your soup pot. So I should mention that in addition to all your ingredients, your mise en place, it also includes your equipment. So for tonight's recipes, we need like a soup pot or a Dutch oven. You're gonna need a saucepan with a lid. You're going to also need a skillet. Okay, so a skillet about this size, and you're going to need a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. You don't have to line it, but that would be an ideal. Something with sides, or you can use like a baking dish. Okay, so that's the equipment that we're going to need for tonight. So what we want to do is we want to start to heat up our oil that we're going to cook our vegetables with. So I'm gonna turn on my burner. So you're gonna turn it on to like, I'd say medium heat. And we're gonna put a tablespoon of oil in there. I'm using canola oil, you could use olive oil, you could use avocado oil, something that would definitely have like a higher heat. Okay, so then what we're going to do, we're just gonna let that come to temperature. So while we're waiting for that to heat up, and I'll give you some tips on how you can tell if it's hot enough. Let's work on our next vegetables, which are our peppers. So these are going to go into our chili. We've got our peppers, we have our onions, and then we're gonna also add in our carrots, and that's gonna be our first layer of vegetables. Okay, so let me give you some tips on how to cut your pepper. Okay, so you're gonna use that knife grip again. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut off that core. Okay, perfect, so that can go in our compost. And then we're going to make a slice down one of the sides of your pepper. Yep. And now you can open it up and it's almost like a book. You can open it up and then, yeah, like that, slice all the way through. Yeah, there you go. And then I'm just gonna take the knife and I'm gonna run it across the pepper and I'm just gonna take out that seed packet. So it's gonna come right out like that. Perfect. And the great thing about this chili is that you can use any vegetable that you like. Excellent. Now we're going to put the cut pepper down on the shiny side down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut strips. And again, we want to think about 1/2 inch. So just come across your pepper. Make sure you tuck in your fingers. When you're dyed, yes, keep your fingers tucked in. And we're going to make them about 1/2 inch wide. Perfect, that looks beautiful. And then we're gonna come across and we're gonna maybe take like 3 in a row. I like to always kind of maximize my time, so I'm not gonna just cut one at a time. And then we're gonna cut them into about 1/2 inch strips. Good. Keep your fingers tucked in, we don't wanna. Yep, there you go. And you could use orange peppers, you know, whatever color you want. You know, we eat with our eyes, not just with our stomachs, so we're gonna have lots of beautiful colors. Okay, so let's cut the other half.
Yes, I love the term eat the rainbow. And there's actually a scientific basis for that too, because all these beautiful colors, you know, this green and the red and certainly the other vegetables we're gonna use today, they all have different pigments called phytonutrients, and they're all really beneficial in terms of our health. So the term eat the rainbow does have scientific merit. So I love that we're incorporating that into recipes.
Awesome. It's beautiful.
I know, it's so pretty.
All right, I'm gonna grab the carrots. And these are gonna be our first layer. Awesome. So there's a couple of ways that you can tell if your oil is hot enough. So the first is you can look and see if you see like little shimmering lines, but it's really hard, I think, to tell from that method. So the other method you can use is you can take a piece of either your peppers or your carrot or your onion, and you can drop it in there and see if it starts to sizzle or if you can see little bubbles. Because the last thing you want to do is put cold vegetables into cold oil. It will just like soak it all up. And we want the oil to coat the vegetable and cook it from the outside in. So let's give it a test and see. Oh yeah, see the little bubbles there? Okay. So it's bubbling, it's sizzling, so we're good to go. So we can go ahead and you want to add in your diced onion. And we're gonna add in the diced pepper that we just cut up. We'll come over here with our handy dandy bench scraper. Add the peppers in. And then we're gonna add in our carrots, which I've already cut, so we wanna make them nice and thin so that they cook faster. And then we're just going to add in a pinch of salt. And this is going to draw out the moisture in the vegetables and allow them to soften up. So we're not sauteing them, we're not browning them, we're just softening them. So I'm just gonna give that a stir, and it's all these beautiful colors of, wow. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's so pretty.
Okay, so you want that like a medium heat. You can hear it sizzling a little bit, but we don't want to hear it like too loud. Okay, so let's work on our salad. So the next thing that we need to do is cook our quinoa. So let's grab our quinoa. So the recipe said to use red quinoa. I have like a mixture here. This is multicolored quinoa. Whatever quinoa you want is absolutely fine. And quinoa is a great source of plant-based protein.
Definitely.
Love quinoa. And it's also a complete protein. So it's a great addition to put in with your vegetables to make a complete protein, and you can make it into a full meal. So the other thing you want to do before you cook your quinoa is to rinse it first. I've already rinsed this because sometimes it has like a little film on it. So it's a good idea to rinse it first. So what we're going to do is we're going to cook our quinoa in a half a cup of quinoa to 1 cup of low sodium vegetable broth. You could use water too, but the broth kind of gives it, you know, a little more flavor to it. And I just want to show you, this is the one that I use. It's called Better Than Bouillon. And it makes they make a low sodium version, and they also make one that's not low sodium. So if it's not low sodium, just use half as much. So I use a teaspoon of the broth mix to 1 cup of water. Okay, so let's go ahead, Dr. Commander, and let's turn that up to, let's put in the quinoa. And just 1 cup, this is 2 cups, we're gonna use the other cup for our kale.
Which is 1 cup.
Yeah, and then we're gonna turn it up to high, we're gonna bring it to a boil, and then we're gonna turn it down to a simmer, and we're gonna cover it and let that absorb. So this is really easy, so we're just gonna turn on, we're just gonna leave it on high, and you'll just let me know when it
Great.
starts to bubble.
Great.
So boiling is big bubbles and simmering is little bubbles, so we will take a look and make sure that we've got that going, so we can put that back. Great. So next up, we're going to work on our beets for our salad.
Love beets.
Love that. So we're gonna be roasting these beets. So if you didn't have your beets already cooked, it's just gonna take you a little bit longer to roast your beets. So I've got already cooked beets and I buy them in this vacuum pack. You can certainly cook them yourself, but I always try to save time whenever possible. I'm sure you'll all appreciate that. So beets do take a while to cook. But if you were going to pre-cook them, you would just like put them in foil and then you can roast them in the oven. And that way they'll retain their moisture, but they'll also get nice and soft. So we've got our beets here. So we're gonna go ahead and we're going to dice up our beets. So I'll give you 2 beets and I'll take 2. And beets definitely are going to get a little messy. So you definitely want to have your side towel ready. So what we're going to do with our beets is we're just going to cut them into planks so that they're all nice and even. And then we'll cut it in half again. And then we just want to cut them into about 1/2 inch pieces like that. So go ahead and give them. They're so easy, right? That's what I love about them, already cooked. And beets, they're just like, they roast up so beautifully and they get really caramely. And they're gonna get even more caramelized because we're going to cook them with some balsamic vinegar and a little bit of olive oil. And that's gonna form a delicious glaze on our beets without adding any extra sugar, because there's a lot of sugar already in there, right? So let me get, we're gonna take our parchment lined baking sheet. And we're going to put our beets on there. So let me grab my, I'll save your hands from getting all dirty.
Please, that big.
How's our quinoa doing? You see
Okay.
bubbles?
Yes, I see big bubbles
Okay.
actually.
All right, so let's turn that down. We'll turn it down to like a medium low, maybe to like, like a 5.
Okay.
And then we're gonna put the cover on and we can set our timer for 15 minutes and then we'll check that. And I want to keep my station nice and clean. Okay. So we've got our beets on our parchment lined baking sheet. And one thing I also want to say is that baking sheets are also a really great investment because I just love roasting vegetables. It's such a great way to get some delicious flavor in there. And it's so easy and they're so versatile. Like you can put them in the oven and just walk away, set your timer. And then when when it's done, you have all these different vegetables that you can add to salads and soups and put them in the freezer and add them later. You always have something to eat when you roast vegetables. And I just add a little bit of oil normally and some salt and pepper, and they're so versatile. So that's my favorite. And that's like a tip I'll give you guys, just roast veggies. Okay, so for these beets though, we're gonna add, like I said, we're gonna add another layer by adding some balsamic vinegar and some oil. So let me grab that. So if you want to measure out 1/3 of a cup of that and a tablespoon of oil, and we can just toss it directly onto the baking sheet. So just a tablespoon of oil and 3/4 of a cup of balsamic vinegar. And that's why we need the sides, because it is going to be a little syrupy. Yep, go for it.
All right.
Oh, yeah, that is gonna be just amazing. And I'm just gonna hit it with a little bit of salt. Wow. These are gonna get nice and caramelized, and there'll even be a little of the syrup left over. So we can put it on directly on our salad. So we're gonna put these into our preheated 400-degree oven and set the timer for 15 minutes. You wanna agree? Do that. Going to grab the oven for you? Yeah, the top of it. We're putting the beets in the oven. Yeah. And if you could just set that timer for, oh, sure. That's your timer. Perfect. All right, so let's come back over to our chili and see if our vegetables are softening up. Oh, yeah. They're definitely getting nice and soft. I just want to show you how beautiful these look. You can see those veggies. They gorgeous. It's like,
wow.
yeah, it's like a fiesta. Looks beautiful.
It's a rainbow in there for sure.
All right, so I'm just gonna turn that up a little bit. All right, so now that those are softening up, so that was layer number one. Adding a little salt in there, sweating on our vegetables. This is what we call in culinary terms your mirepoix or your aromatics. That's gonna form the first base. So then let's talk about our second layer, which are our spices. So for tonight's chili, we have some garlic, some minced garlic, and then I have chili powder and cumin. So this is going to form that basis of the great chili flavor. So let me just warn you that when you put the chili powder in, it says 4 to 6 teaspoons of chili powder. So you decide how strong you want it. So if you want it really strong, you can put like 6 teaspoons in there. If you don't want so much meat in there, you can modify. So, decide. A tablespoon of cumin, and then I have 3 teaspoons or 3 garlic cloves that have been minced. So we're going to add that in there. And this is a technique that's called blooming your spices. So what we're doing is we're dry toasting those spices without adding any liquid, and you can smell them. They're going to start to get really aromatic and fragrant. And this is also a great technique that you can use when you're making like any kind of soup or stock. But I have to say, it also kind of reinvigorates your spices. I don't know about you, but I've had spices in my cabinet for a long time. For sure. And so dry toasting them like this is going to really wake them up. So
It smells so good right now. Oh my goodness.
it's a
For
great
those of you cooking along with us, I hope your kitchen smells good as ours, but it's really amazing. It's so pretty.
Okay, so then the next layer is our tomato paste. So we have a can of tomato paste. So this technique is going to caramelize the tomato paste. So again, we're going to dry cook it before we've added any liquid. And we're just going to put that tomato paste directly into our chili. And it's going to turn from bright red to dark red. And it's going to get nice and caramelized. It's going to really intensify the flavor. So you can give this a stir. Sure. While I'm putting in the tomato paste, and you can see how it's going to start to change color. And this is a great technique to use when you're making pasta sauce. It's going to really intensify that flavor. All right. Oh yeah, that's looking really good.
So pretty.
All right, so let's let that do its thing. Yeah, so I'll grab this. And then we have one more vegetable to prep before we add that into our chili, and that is the sweet potato, which is like one of the heroes of this dish. I love sweet potatoes. They're just so delicious and so nutritious. So let's start prepping these, and then we can talk more about that.
Great.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut off each end, just the little root ends there. And now, you can see as this potato is like very rolly. So we never want to have something rolling around on a cutting surface. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut off just a little bit of that sweet potato. Just cut off a little. Yep. There you go. And then you can see how it's nice and firm now. Yeah. Okay, so then we're going to cut it into planks. Okay. So we're going to cut about a half an inch plank. Good. Yours is pretty thick. So just, yeah. Well, that one's really big. Now I'm gonna trade you, so you can take my planks. And I'm gonna take your potato.
I know, I went to the expert.
This one's really thick. Okay, so then, we're just gonna cut it into 1/2-inch planks. Perfect. So what I found out today, because and then we're gonna cut it
Okay,
again into about half inch chunks. So what I found out today, because I was researching sweet potatoes versus regular potatoes, because I always thought that regular potatoes, like white potatoes, weren't as nutritious. And it is true that sweet potatoes are a little more nutritious, right? They have like
Yeah,
more.
it's so funny, they both research that. There's this, there's so much information out there about nutrition, and you can't always believe everything you read or hear, but we were both interested in why is it felt that sweet potatoes are healthier than like your standard white potato? And actually, they're pretty similar in terms of nutritional value, although these guys have more vitamin A and a little bit more fiber and maybe a lower glycemic index, right? Is that what you read as
That's
well?
what I read too,
Which
yeah.
means it, causes less of a spike of blood sugar, which is important, of course.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the properties, white potatoes are still, they still have lots of health benefits, lots of fiber, which is so important for our diet, especially when we're thinking about cancer risk reduction and thinking about reducing risk for heart disease. So potatoes are your friend. These potatoes are particularly pretty though.
Oh, yeah.
Adding another color to our chili now.
Yeah,
So
gorgeous. Okay, so now we can add in the next ingredient. So I can see that my, wow, look at that. So the tomato paste has really turned.
amazing.
Dark red.
Kind of like my dress.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe Dr. Quinn, you can hand me the other ingredients on my yeast tray. So I'm gonna add in all those sweet potatoes, give that a stir. And then the next ingredient is we have black beans.
Okay.
Perfect. So the can of black beans, but you could add in any kind of bean that you want. You could use navy beans, you could use kidney beans, any bean that you want that's gonna form a nice base, some more plant-based protein into our chili. And then we're gonna add in our next ingredient.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a can of 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. So you can buy the tomatoes whole and you can crush them yourself if you like. We're gonna cheat a little bit and get them already crushed. Again, whenever I can save time, I'm all about that. So we're gonna give that a stir. And then we're gonna add in 2 cans of green chilies. So these are very mild, so these won't add a lot of heat. But if you want, you could add in jalapenos. The great thing about this recipe is you could really, adapt it however you want. You could add in corn if you wanted. You could put zucchini in, like if you didn't like peppers, you could add in any root vegetables that you like, parsnips, turnips instead of the carrots. It's really, really versatile. And then I think we have a little water over there. That's right in that water, yeah.
Oh, you were very prepared. The water was measured.
So I'm gonna add in a cup of water, and you know what, you might want to add in more. You kind of see, you can kind of assess how thick you want your chili.
This looks so good.
Doesn't that look good?
Really, really
And just
amazing.
the colors are just beautiful. Okay, so now what we want to do is just let this simmer. And yours might take a little bit longer. It just depends. This is called an induction burner, so it really runs very hot. So our chili might be done before yours is, but you just, we'll show you how to tell if it's done. Okay, so let's kind of assess where we're at, Dr. Commander. So how's our quinoa doing? How much
So
more
we
time do we have on there?
About 5 more minutes on the quinoa.
Okay.
For a second, I was afraid I would start on the timer.
I've
but-
done that before. I forgot to press start.
But yeah, we have 5 minutes on
Okay.
that, and it looks like about 7 minutes on this.
Okay, perfect. And our chili is just going to cook. So why don't we take some questions at this
Yes,
point?
we're
Perfect
happy to
time.
take some questions. Can I ask you a question first?
Please do.
I'm just like so impressed by how this came together so quickly. So you did mention a limiting factor for many people to cook at home. Something like this is time. So for busy people like me, like what are some strategies you teach people to help be prepped so that when they get home from work, it's kind of a little easier to throw together a healthy dinner like this?
Yeah, so like I said, that mise en place is really important, having everything ready to go. So you could buy frozen vegetables already chopped and ready to go that you could just add into like a chili or stew, because they're like packaged at the peak of freshness. So some people think, oh, they're not as healthy, but that's absolutely fine. You could buy things that are already chopped and fresh that you can add in. Like I am all about anything that will save time and get you to cook. A lot of times what I'll do if I'm making, let's say quinoa or a grain, I'll make extra. because it takes just as long to make 1 cup as it does to make 3 cups. And then what I'll do is I'll just package it in like baggies and I'll put it in the freezer. I'll just label it 1 cup cooking quinoa, date it, put it in the freezer and have it ready to go. The
I
same,
hope you're taking notes, these are good tips.
the same thing with like the
Okay.
beets, like the veggies. I
Yeah.
would roast like number of beets and then I'll have them. And I
Yeah.
just love them. They're like candy.
It's so funny that you say that. You think that would be obvious, but like I actually don't do that to cook things in bulk like that. I think it's a really great tip.
Yeah.
So are there questions for us?
Yes. One of our viewers would like you to show her the chili as it's cooking right now.
Okay, I'm gonna
It's
show
it's
it
kind
to
of
you.
hard to see the
I know,
inside of the
it's
pot
so
from this
pretty. I
view.
feel so fortunate that I get to see it.
All right, so hold on, I'm going to, I added a little more water because I saw it was like a little, too thick and I want to give it a little more.
Careful.
Yeah, I don't know if you
Can
can
you
see
see
that.
it?
Can you see that? Yes, okay, so it looks really, really colorful.
I just want to say how this chili really is, all those points they made really quickly at the
Mhm.
beginning of this session about, fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, limiting added sugars in our diet, limiting ultra processed food. I mean, this chili checks all the boxes. I mean, it's pretty amazing how many vegetables are in this chili, plus the beans, which give us extra fiber. And that's another important learning point. In the United States, most of us get 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day. That's sort of the standard American diet. And we're really supposed to get at least 30 grams of fiber per day. And this is really important, certainly for cancer risk reduction. There's good data about this in terms of lowering risk for colon cancer, but this is also really important for prevention of heart disease. So eating this chili, I mean, we'd have to calculate it, but I bet there's a lot of fiber in this chili. So just one great example of how to get more fiber into your diet from a meal like this. Go ahead with another question, sorry.
Can this recipe be frozen and how long can it stay in the freezer?
Absolutely, so I would say it would stay in the fridge for like a week easily, and it could be frozen for like 4 to 6 months. That would be fine. But the one thing I would recommend is always label your food before you put it in the freezer. It becomes like a big black hole, at least it
For
is in
sure.
my house. And so it's great idea, label it and date it, and then you'll know.
That's a great tip.
Did you peel the sweet potatoes or is it best to leave the skin on?
Good question. So you certainly could. I left the skin on because it's also very nutritious. And as long as you scrub it, same thing with the carrots, you don't need to peel it. So I would recommend leaving the skin on. It adds more fiber.
We all need that fiber in our diet, however we're gonna get it, so.
Why do you add parchment paper to the roasting pan?
Oh, good question. So it's really for easier cleanup. That's why I do it. You don't have to do it. If you want to get like a really nice, like sear on your roasted vegetables, you could just do it directly on the pan. But I'm all about making it easier to clean up, so that's what I
No,
do.
I love that too.
How do you choose which oil to use and how much, since we all need to cut oil in our diet?
Good question. Well, I'll start with
Sure.
that. So you want to pick your oil depending on what you're cooking. So oil has something called a smoke point, which means when it starts to burn. So if you're going to be roasting or sauteing or, cooking something on a hot surface, you want to use an oil that has a high smoke point. So the oils, the healthiest ones I would recommend are olive oil, always a good one. It goes up to about 425. Safflower oil is also really healthy. Avocado oil and canola oil, but I would get expeller pressed non-GMO olive oil. Canola oil. Okay, so let's take a look. Well, hold on, we're gonna take some more questions. Let's take a look. Oh, yes.
Our quinoa
Our
is done.
quinoa is done, so all the water has been absorbed from our quinoa, so that looks great. So we're just gonna take this off of the stove and we're gonna put it on the side, just let it cool, so just take it off of your stove. And we're just gonna put it aside, and we'll come back to that.
We usually get lots of questions about quinoa, by the way. Where do you find it? I've never cooked with it. I'm a little scared of it. Would you like to address that? I'm sure you get those questions all the time too.
Yeah, well, it's so popular right now, I think it's had its moment, just like kale has, and we're gonna talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
So I find it now, like in the grain section, wherever you find like rice or, any of the
Trader
other,
Joe's,
yeah,
yeah.
any of the other grains, you can get it pre-cooked. If you really,
Really?
don't have time, yeah, but it takes like hardly
Yeah.
any time at all.
Exactly.
So, very easy, and there's like, there's red quinoa, there's white quinoa, there's multicolored quinoa, anything that you get is going to be a good choice, so. I say, just try it, and the thing with quinoa is it's very neutral tasting, so you can just
Right.
kind of really, add it you add your flavor profile to it. So for example, like with this chili, you could put some quinoa in there and that would be great too. It just kind of absorbs the flavor of what you're cooking.
And I love how you mentioned earlier, it's a great source of plant-based protein. So if you're trying to adopt more of a plant-predominant diet, like making sure you're getting enough protein in your diet, quinoa is a very great source of protein. So another reason to incorporate into your diet. So
We have time for one more question.
Okay,
Just give us a stir.
can this recipe be adapted for those with reflux?
Oh, good question. So I have to say, I have reflux also. And so sometimes I have a hard time with something that's really tomatoey, like it has a lot of tomato in it. So what I do is I just add more greens to it. So it kind of, I just want to say, like dissipates some of the intensity and the acidity of the tomatoes. And you could just add, like I said, some quinoa in there, so you can add some more neutral tasting flavors, so it can kind of counterbalance the acidity of the tomatoes. Do you have any
no, I think
suggestions?
that sounds very
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yeah, because that can be really tough on your stomach. I also wanted to say in terms of like the chili, like if you do freeze it and when you reheat it, I always challenge myself to add something, add a veggie to it, something. And this would do really well to add like some pretty greens.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a great way to add it, or add some quinoa, or add something. I always like to try to add some vegetable whenever I'm reheating a dish.
That's a great strategy. And just to get more vegetables into our diet. I know that was the last question, but you can't really give a talk about nutrition and cancer prevention without talking about the gut microbiome. And there's so much interesting, exciting research being done in this area. Uh-oh, another timer's going on. But in terms of our gut microbiome, which are the bacteria in our gastrointestinal tract that actually play an important role in health, and we're really learning more about what these bacteria can do for us, which is good and bad potentially. But research has shown that having a diversity of vegetables and plants and fruit, of course, in your diet is what is optimal to making our gut microbiome happy. And so actually there's a study that showed that it's ideal to have 30 different plants in your diet to help optimize the diversity of the gut microbiome. So I was trying to count how many veggies we have in that chili. I feel like it was like maybe even 8. And you're right, if you add another veggie to it, 9. And then of course we have the beets and a bunch of other things that we're gonna be cooking tonight. So our gut microbiome are gonna be quite happy with these meals. So anyway, I'll let you take over, Laura.
Okay, so the beet timer just went off. So the way you can tell if your beets are done is they're fork tender. So the fork went right through. So these are good to go. They're nice and they're nice and caramelized. They look a little blackened. So those are perfect. So we can just take your beets out of the oven if they're fork tender, and we're gonna just put them aside for now as well. So I'm gonna put these over here, and Dr. Commander, I'm gonna give you the skillet because we're gonna start to work next on our kale. So this is the kale, curly kale.
So pretty.
Yeah, this is the hero of our salad, right? And kale is all the rage right now, right? Everyone talks about kale because it is such a great leafy green. There's so much nutrition in here. It's got lots of fiber, vitamin K. It's just like, and it's very sturdy too. It holds up really well. So we're going to be making this warm kale salad. So we're going to kind of wilt it down so we can have it, as a salad, as opposed to just having it raw, because it can be a little fibrous. So this is a great strategy. So here's what we're going to do. You can buy the kale like in the package when it's already been like destemmed. But I bought this beautiful heads of kale. They look beautiful. I really want to eat it. And I'm just going to show you how we process this. So it has this really
Process it in a good way.
yes. Work with it. So it has like this kind of reedy stem in it. So you can just pull the leaves off. It's almost like a zipper. Whoop, it just flies off of there. And just pull it right off of the stem. And it's good to have that compost bowl nearby. Yeah, just kind of pull that right off of there. And also this compost, you can make your own veggie stock out of the all of these little bits and pieces of the veggie that we're not using. And I have to say, I'm going to admit this. I tell everyone, make your own veggie stock because it's so much healthier. It's less expensive. You can season it yourself. And I have never actually made it myself until a couple of weeks ago when I took my own advice. and made it, and oh my gosh, it was so delicious.
Oh,
And it was just so much better than the store-bought,
amazing. We'll have
stuff.
to do another cooking class. on
Yes,
that.
yes, because it's so easy, and I thought it would take so much time, and it took a half an
Yeah.
hour, so it
Amazing.
was great, yeah. So you keep doing that, I'm gonna show you how I'm just going to very easily, give this a rough chop. So I'm just gonna take a bunch of this kale, I'm gonna kind of wrap it into a little ball, and I'm just gonna come across with my knife, with my safe hands, and just give it a little chop. Now I see my chili is bubbling away, that's okay, we just want like little bubbles in there.
No, it's really good. I was telling you before this that I read that there's actually a shortage of iceberg lettuce now. And
Oh.
it's really been affecting restaurants. Maybe some of you have read about it. So kale
Good
is
time
in
to
the
get the kale.
limelight. So it's a good opportunity to learn about how to cook with kale, which is so good for us.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you take maybe just
You're
a
going
few
to
more
slow-
stalks. Well, I don't think we need all of this. I really kind of went hog wild on it because it just looks so beautiful.
It is really pretty.
Yeah, I think this is probably gonna be, we need like 6 cups of
That's a lot.
kale. That looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that looks good. Okay,
Should we move this? over?
yes, please. So let's switch places for a minute. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to make our kale. But before we do that, we're gonna add in some layers of flavor again. So we're going to saute our aromatics, which in this case is going to be garlic and smoked paprika. So let's turn our burner onto medium high. And thank you very much, Dr. Commander. And also if you could grab the olive oil or the canola oil. Thank you. So we want to put about a tablespoon of canola oil into your skillet, and make sure you have a skillet that has high sides, because we're gonna, this kale, it's a lot of volume, but it's gonna cook down. And I also recommend using a tongs so you can toss it. So if you have tongs, that's great. Oh, perfect, thank you. So we have some tongs here. So we're gonna be sauteing this garlic and smoked paprika. Now, smoked paprika is different than regular paprika. It has that smoky taste, that's why it's called smoke. And I actually like to say it's almost like adding some bacon. Can I say that? Adding some bacon.
But it's not
But it's not
bacon.
bacon. It gives you that same,
That's good. It's gotta get that in there.
yeah, the same
Processed meats, I
satisfaction.
should say. Yes. Yeah.
So I highly recommend trying that if you haven't tried it before. So we're gonna go ahead and add that in. So I know it's hot enough because I can hear it sizzling. And we're just gonna let that heat up now. Garlic.
Oh, that smells really good too.
Yeah, and garlic definitely burns really quickly, so we just want to give it just a little bit of heat so it doesn't burn. And then, I can smell that, right?
Yeah, it's
Smells so good.
amazing. Just that.
And then we're gonna add in our kale with about a cup of water, so I believe, I'm sorry, not water, the vegetable stock, I have some vegetable stock left. So we're just gonna take the kale, we're gonna put it into our skillet. And then we're gonna let it wilt down with some of this vegetable stuff, so we'll just kind of gradually add that in here. Oh yeah, you can hear that, right?
Yeah.
And you may need a little bit more water, so you can always have a little bit more water on hand in case you need that. We'll just see how it does. Okay, so. Just gonna kind of give it like a little toss with the, yeah, so we can switch places, so you can just give it a little turn with the tongs and just kind of let it wilt down. And see how that does. So gonna just give this a little swipe here. We want to try to keep our surface nice and neat as we can. We've got this huge compost going. Let's give a check on our chili and see how that's going. So give the chili a stir. You don't want it to get like stuck to the bottom of the pan, so I'm just gonna give that a little stir. And it's just bubbling away, doing its thing, smelling delicious.
Yes,
Alright.
this kitchen smells so amazing right now.
All right, so how's that going? Is it starting to wilt down?
Definitely.
Okay, great. So while Dr. Commander is doing that, I want to share with you my topping bar. This is my favorite part of the chili.
I know Laura's very excited about
I'm all
this,
about toppings. So, you can choose to, you know, decorate your chili any way you like. I'm gonna, show you what we're doing here. So I'm gonna move some of these things out of the way. So I have here, I'm gonna move this one. I have here, some low-fat yogurt, some shredded cheddar cheese. I also had some peanuts and I have some cilantro. So I want to just show you two tips. And these are all optional toppings, you know, if you're not eating dairy or cheese, you don't have to do that. You can use the peanuts, you can use seasoning, whatever you like. So I've got some roasted peanuts here, and I just want to show you how I chop them. So instead of actually using a knife, I'm just going to use the bottom of the bowl and just kind of crunch it like this. And I love this method because it doesn't like fly all over the place, you know, like when you try to chop like
That's a
little
great
tiny
tip.
peanuts. Yeah. So just use the bowl and give it a little chop.
Definitely learning something new.
And that's gonna go right into our bowl.
And again, another source of protein. Nuts are so good for us. And so put a little on the chili, makes it taste delicious, and you're just getting extra nutrition along the way. So, yeah. Awesome. You want the cilantro?
Yeah, so then, I have some cilantro. You could use parsley, you could use whatever herbs you like. I always try to put something green because it adds some really beautiful contrasting colors to all the red that's in our chili. So I wanted to show you how I store my herbs, because everyone always asks me this. So what I do is when I get my cilantro or parsley out from the supermarket, I take off that little tag, you know, that pulls it together, a rubber band. I wash it off, and then I dry it on the counter. And then I wrap it up in a paper towel, and then I store it back in the bag that it came in. And it usually lasts like about a week. So you can do that. I find that if I don't wash it right away, or if I don't dry it right away, then it kind of goes bad. So I kind of like to wash it and dry it and process it as soon as I get home. So I remember to do that. And I put it back into the bag and it goes back in the fridge. So if you are chopping your cilantro, which I highly recommend, so that we have some nice, easily manipulated little bits of cilantro. What I do is you can definitely eat the stem of the cilantro, unlike some other herbs like parsley or rosemary that's like too greedy. So I'm going to take that cilantro, I'm just going to wrap it into a little ball like this. I'm going to come across, just going to cut off the very ends. And then I'm just going to give that a rough chop. See how easy that is? And this is going to be a beautiful garnish for our chili, and also provide a nice contrast and add some green.
Another plant.
Yeah, more plants. Can't get too much of those plants. All right.
I love that, Tim. Thanks for sharing.
All right. So how's our kale looking? Is it
It's
wilting
really,
away?
like, it's almost all wilted, so I wasn't sure if this is, if you consider that.
Oh, yeah, that looks really good. So let's hold up a piece so everyone can see what it looks like. I will see it. Oh, yeah, that looks beautiful. That's gorgeous. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that quinoa and we're gonna add that in. So you just grab here, I'll do that for you. So I'm just going to take the quinoa, we're gonna add in, we can turn this off now because it's done. We're gonna add in our quinoa. And then we'll just give that a stir. Give that back to you, thank you. So now we've got our beautiful bright green kale and our quinoa. And Dr. Quinn, if you could bring over the, yeah, and the platter, please.
Oh.
We're gonna plate that. Excellent, thank you. So I'm just gonna take the kale and quinoa, you guys can see how bright green that is and beautiful.
That just took a few minutes. It really took
Yeah.
no time.
Yeah, and you can see how like that whole batch of kale like cooked down to like next to nothing.
Yeah, really good.
And then we're going to take the beets and we're gonna put them on top of the same. So what I like, this is another reason why I like using the parchment paper, is I can just lift this up,
Wow,
put the beets right on top.
that looks so pretty.
And part of cooking is also tasting your food so that you can season it. So let's give it a taste, Dr. Commander. I have a tasting spoon here for you. I have one for me, and let's see if it needs any seasoning. Just give it a little taste and see what you think. Wow.
That's
Those
amazing.
beets,
Mhm.
they're like candy, right?
Oh, my goodness, that
Oh,
was so
so
good.
good.
I've never made beets that way, and I will now.
Mhm.
It's really amazing.
So one
Yeah.
thing I would do is I'm just gonna give a little pinch of salt, just to add a little contrast to that sweetness, okay? So there is a beautiful beet salad. And now let's work on our chili. So let's see how we're doing over here. So I don't know if your chili might not quite be done yet. So let me just see if this is fork tender. We've got a fork here. So you want to just stick it into your vegetables and see if you can stick your fork through. So like my sweet potatoes need a little more time. So let's take a couple minutes and answer some questions and before we plate our chili.
Yes.
Can you suggest a brand of knife that is lightweight for seniors?
I mean, only the knives that I use are a little heavier. They're called Woodstock knives. So I don't actually know what brand would be lighter than that. I only know they're professional knives, but I can look into that and I can give you the answer and you can put it in the email that you send out, Kim. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Somebody had been asking a question about the scraps in the bowl,
Yeah.
and you did answer you can make a stock. Is there anything else that you might be able to do with those
I
scraps
mean-
so they don't go to waste?
Well, you can freeze them if you don't want to make a stock right away, and then you can make it when you're ready to do that. That would be one thing. You could, make it into a bowl, literally. Like I love bowls. I'm all about bowls. So I'll take leftover veggies, leftover grains, leftover legumes, and just make it into a bowl and put a little like balsamic vinegar and a little bit of oil, some salt and pepper in there, and it's just, it's great. You have a meal.
And that's one thing I did want to say. We made all this amazing food. I know the chili's almost done, but this is like a completely plant-based meal, which is really impressive for those of you who might be thinking about how can I incorporate more, plants into my diet. And this was a great example, right? And so do you cook like this all the time?
I do. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like, it's gonna be so delicious. I can't wait to try.
Would the beet salad be enough for a meal? If I wanted to add cheese, would the doctor please talk about cheese and cancer?
Oh, what a great question. So, well, first of all, and if you're wondering if it'd be enough for a meal because you want to have some type of protein source in this beautiful salad, there are lots of ways to incorporate protein into it. It does already have quinoa, by the way, which is a great plant-based protein. Other ways you can incorporate more protein into this salad that perhaps, you can talk about cheese, but you could certainly use these peanuts, for example, or walnuts, or if you were adding a nut to that salad, which would you choose?
Well, hazelnuts would be really nice, pistachios. Hazelnuts would be my first choice. I think it would complement the beets really well. Yeah.
Right. But when we talk about cheese, I will say, cheese can be high in saturated fat. So again, this is American Heart Month in addition to Cancer Prevention Month. And we do know that high intake of saturated fat is really not great for our cardiovascular health. Certainly if you have a little bit of cheese, if it's something you love, obviously we have cheese here as an option for the chili topping, like a little bit's okay. But if you're trying to make this salad more hearty, so it's more like a meal, I would think about, like Laura said, adding perhaps some hazelnuts or maybe adding some additional vegetables to it just to make it a little bit more filling. But I think it's going to be pretty filling the way it is, just given that there's quinoa, that whole grain. Again, whole grains are a great thing to add to our diet because of so many nutrients, fiber, many of them contain protein, and so many other health benefits. I don't know if you want to comment on any other whole grains that you love to cook with that maybe some participants are not familiar with, like freekeh.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say brown rice is like
Oh, yeah.
my favorite because that
rice.
is just a whole
Yeah.
grain and you can just make it in bulk and you can add it to anything. I really like farro. That's one of my
Farro,
favorites.
yes.
And you can get it at Trader Joe's, like the 10-minute farro, and it takes like no
Oh,
time
yeah,
at all.
that is so good.
And you can just add it into soups and stews and it'll cook right in there. And it's like kind of nutty and chewy, kind of like freekeh too, is kind of
Yes.
like that.
I know I've made that
Um,
before. So-
Yeah, so those are two of my favorites. And also the brown rice, I like the short grain brown rice. It's chewier, it has a really nice texture, it's kind of nutty, and that's one of my favorites.
Right. So many great whole grains to explore and really healthy for us for both cancer risk reduction and to prevent heart disease.
Yeah, and batch cook them, definitely.
Oh, yeah,
batch
I
cook them.
love that too. I definitely love that too.
Yeah, make extra. All right, so let's check on our stew or our chili, and let's give it a taste, Dr. Cran, before we serve it. So we have our tasting spoons. Always good to have tasting spoons. So come on over, and I'm gonna give you a little taste. And here, so whoops.
Thank you.
Here's for you. I'll take a little taste and see if you think it needs
So
any
excited to
seasoning.
taste this chili.
It's gonna be really tough. Be careful. Mm. You think? Good, huh? Oh, and with those toppings, oh my
It
gosh.
was just a little hot, but it's
Yeah.
amazing.
All right, so
So-
let's serve that up. And we'll top it however you like.
And chili, like you said, is a great thing to make for the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Make a big bowl of chili, and certainly if you're having friends over, it's great. Oh, I'm going to demonstrate this beautiful bowl of chili, so.
Yes, and yours might not be done yet, so if your veggies aren't done yet, just keep it on low and it's gonna thicken up. You can add more liquid to that. So let's take our topping bar and let's like make a little.
And I love that we have black beans in this chili. Beans are great, another plant-based source of protein. Beans are so good for us. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the blue zone, the parts of the world where there's the largest percentage of centenarians, individuals living to 100 or beyond. They eat a lot of beans in their diet, so beans are really good for us. Do you want to comment on, I know we're about to do this, but there's so many different kinds of beans to try. They're
Oh, yeah.
so good for us.
Yeah, I mean, like the black beans, those are probably the most popular beans, but you can also buy beans dried. And that is another great way you do it. They're actually more nutritious if you buy them dried and then soak them overnight and then cook them. But if you don't want to go through all that, you can just, buy them canned and already pre-cooked and just add them to anything. And I also want to talk about chickpeas.
Oh,
So
yeah.
chickpeas are kind of like a hybrid, they're a legume, but
Yeah.
they're like a bean and they're plant-based protein and they are just so delicious.
That would be good on that salad too.
Yeah,
So the person
chickpeas
who
are
asked about the
awesome.
cheese, chickpeas would be amazing.
Yeah.
And make it, keep it as a plant base. Anyway. why
All
don't you
right,
show us
so let's go ahead. So let's start doctoring up your chili. So you decide what you want. I'm gonna put some cilantro on mine and a little bit of cheese. Yes, I'm gonna put the cheese on there.
use the peanuts, so.
And this is yogurt. I think I'm not gonna put the yogurt on mine because I like a lot of peanut on mine, so I'm okay with that. I'll put a couple of peanuts on top. Look at that. Doesn't that look beautiful?
Cilantro sauce over too.
So this is gonna be, yeah, so let's see. All right, let's give it a taste, see what you think. With all your toppings on there.
I'm so excited to see this tonight. So,
So good. Right? And it's like sweet and savory and spicy. It's just a great combination. And then we have our beautiful salad.
the peanuts make it so delicious too. I love that extra crunch. So,
So this is gonna make a great Super Bowl party dinner,
for
right?
sure.
Awesome.
I am going to a Super Bowl party. Now I know it's
Oh,
a thing.
absolutely, right? Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Quinlan. This is
Yeah, I thought I would end with one quote that I love whenever I give nutrition lectures. Maybe some of you are familiar with Michael Pollan and his book called Food Rules. And his nutrition advice is as follows: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So here you go. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And we look forward to sending you more information tomorrow. Thank you.
Great. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.